Folks, listen.
Welcome to another episode of D&M, bringing questions for you that we find interesting. We don't know until the other person says, and bring a mystery to the table for all the generations. Two people from two different backgrounds trying to make sound about the world around us. They both bringing light to the questions they ask. Dina and Michael sliding in your DMs with class. Hey, it's D&M. Hey, it's D&M. D&M. It's D&M. Hey, it's D&M.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 17 of Sliding with D&M. This week, I have cultural, and Dina has global, and I'm going to start us off this week. How have you been doing today?
Good, not too bad. Not too bad, always keeping busy and keeping working. The weather is finally warming up. Thank goodness. It's getting nice outside. It's May. I always like May because then it's that transition to almost being summer. And one of my favorite holidays is Memorial Day weekend because like summer's right around the corner. And in a normal, not pandemic world, like that's when all the summer festivals start to happen and things start to pick up. And so I always like the month of May, not to mention that my youngest is born in the month of May, and she was actually born on Memorial Day, believe it or not, when I had her. So I do. I'm ready for summer, I think. We're starting to plan some things of what we're going to do and where we're going to go. So safely, however, you can still travel and do things. People, I've said this before. You just have to do it safely because you know better. You do know better. So, yeah, but that's it. But I'm excited to hear your question because you have cultural this week.
I do. So, I've been thinking about this quite a bit just because I feel like in today's day and age, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and I don't think it's very accurately defined. So I want to hear your opinion on it as a person of color, right?
Okay.
So the term cultural appropriation, right? When somebody takes a piece of somebody else's culture or a different ethnicity and basically like tries to make it their own when they're not of that ethnicity or that cultural group, right?
Okay.
So at what point does cultural appropriation occur, and is it always a negative thing? Because I feel like cultural appropriation in the media and in social media is always negative. So what is your opinions on that? And if you want, I can start by giving you like some of the things that I think about when I hear cultural appropriation.
Okay. Wow. All right. So I think we have to be clear, and it's a fine line. We have to be clear about the difference between honoring a culture and cultural appropriation. I think if you're honoring a culture, for instance, maybe dressing in an African dress, out of respect and honor, that's okay. It becomes appropriation when you aren't respecting the reason why you're dressing that way. Like if you're just dressing that way because everybody does it, or you want to make a statement, or you want to be this or be that, then I feel like it becomes an appropriation issue. But I feel like if you're honoring it and you're respectful in how you're doing it, then it's not appropriation. But it's a very fine line, and it can turn real quick. Like, you see those people that are like, oh, well, I thought I was. And you can kind of tell, too, if people are being genuine about how they're honoring different cultures and when they're not being genuine about it, disingenuine about it. And so I think I personally, if you're honoring the culture properly and appropriately, it's not appropriation. But if you're doing it with kind of ill intentions, then it becomes appropriation, and it's just not appropriate, and you just shouldn't do it. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about it a little bit more in depth, though, because in my opinion, like appropriation, the word to appropriate means to take, like to adopt a part of it, right? So it like I just have trouble with the negative connotation of the word, because I feel like the the word itself, right? Like the denotation, the dictionary definition of cultural appropriation isn't inherently bad. You know what I mean? Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like me appropriating a piece of someone else's culture is can be a positive thing, right? If I take a piece of somebody else's culture and try to honor it in a way because I respect that culture, it's
Yeah.
still appropriation, but it's in a positive way, right?
And that's what I was saying. Like, if you're doing it out of respect, out of
Hmm.
honoring that culture,
Yeah.
you're taking that piece of culture and saying, hey, I respect this enough that I want to show my own homage to that culture, but I'm going to
Hmm.
do it respectfully. It's when you have the ill intentions and you don't honor and respect it for what it truly was meant to be, that's when it becomes the negative connotation. That's how I
Yeah.
look at it in my head. I
Yeah.
don't know if you look at it in your head that way, but that's how I look at it in my head.
No, that's kind of how I think about it. I think that oftentimes people get accused of cultural appropriation, and it's not negative. In my opinion, I don't have an issue with it until it is, grounds to where you're making fun of a culture or you're bashing it in some way. You're being disrespectful on purpose. That's where I have an issue with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have an issue with anybody doing anything out of respect. And I find that oftentimes, like, very small minority populations, like certain tribes, possibly have issues with people doing anything related to their culture. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of it has to do with just the history of people being disrespectful to their culture. So I think they're already sensitive to that just because they've been through so much and they don't want it to happen again. And you never know when somebody is being respectful or being disrespectful and what their intentions are. Right.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So do you think that people of color can appropriate, for instance, a white person's culture? So you being a black lady, do you think that you can appropriate my Russian culture?
Wow. I've never thought about that. I've never flipped the script like that. I'm gonna
Because
say yes.
keep in mind, cultural appropriation isn't like an ethnic, it's not a racial term, it's just about different cultures, right? Like
Yes. I
you have your black African American culture, right? You're
yes.
not African, you have black culture, you know what I mean? Like it's its
Yes.
own thing, and we've talked about that before.
Mhm.
And my parents come from the Soviet Union, so we have a Eastern European Slavic culture, and
Mhm.
we have our own things that we do in our own traditions. So if you start adopting my traditions, don't you think that would be considered cultural appropriation too?
I would say yes, but I think as long as I did it respectfully
Hmm.
and honored the things that the true intent of what it was supposed to be, those traditions,
Yeah.
then I think everyone at some point probably has done cultural appropriation.
Hmm.
I just think it's how you do it, whether you're doing it out of respect or if you're doing it with ill intentions, right? I think
Hmm.
everybody, has done it on some level. Whether they
Hmm.
know it or not, consciously or subconsciously, I think we just do. Um
Yeah.
so I would say yes. Now, I say yes that and you speaking about the Russian, right, culture,
Hmm.
I could appropriate it, right? I could.
Hmm.
The odds of me doing that, being a person of color, though, are probably very, very minute. But is there a
Oh yeah.
possibility of me doing it? Absolutely. Like, and I
Hmm.
think that goes for any person of color, I feel like. Are we going to do that? No, I don't think we would, but we could if we wanted to. But we are so, people of color, especially African Americans, we have our own rich culture and history that define us, that I don't think we necessarily would want to look outside of taking someone else's culture because of the fact we see so many people take our culture and use
Hmm.
it. And when I say they take our culture and use it, they're using it in a negative way. They're not using it in a positive light and being respectful about it. So we don't like it when it happens to us. So I don't foresee us as African Americans doing it to other people. But could we do it to other people? Absolutely. Everybody could do it to anybody. That's kind of my take. Your thoughts?
I mean, I agree with you. I think that we shouldn't generalize an entire group like that, because I feel like there definitely are people who I think there definitely are white people who want to be black and they culturally appropriate black culture, right? And I think
Okay,
the same is true. Go ahead.
Okay, finish your thought, and then I'm gonna tell you something. Finish your thought.
I think the same thing is true, possibly for a very small percentage, but I think there are black people who want to be white as well. Would you agree with that?
I have, and I've actually seen articles or seen TV things that people there are some African Americans that don't think of themselves as black.
Yeah, they identify as white. I've seen that too. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I don't know who's that lady. She's a famous research lady. She's done research and she's an older white lady that's talked about race and cultures. She's been on TV shows. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to look her name up.
I don't know who you're
Hold
talking
on.
about. While you're looking that up, one of the things that I think of automatically is there was a lady who was like the head of some like African American organization in the US, and she was like super dark and it was obvious that it was from like spray tan. And she had cornrows and she had, like hoops, and she's, just started like to take away from black culture a lot. And they did a DNA test on her and found out that she has no African American heritage at all. And she was just a white lady, being black, basically. So I think that's where people have issues with it. And I do agree with you. I think it's much more common for white people to want to be black than black people to want to be white.
Okay, so I found out that lady. So her name's Jane Elliott. Have you heard of this lady? She's been around. Not. She's an educator, okay? And so she, for years, has talked about... Oh,
is she the one that was on Oprah and does the
brown...
eye color?
Yeah, yes, okay. Yeah. But I thought she was very interesting in that when she was talking about different race and everything, she said the origins of humanity and what we are is actually comes from Africa. Did you hear it? That comes from Africa. Yeah. And then as people migrated away, right? Obviously, when you're not, I call it the motherland. When you're not in the motherland, you're not tan anymore, people. You get a little bit lighter when you're moving to those. And so that's how we get the color variations of different races and different people. So I find it interesting when you say that people want to act black, quote unquote, right? Honestly, you're trying to be something that someone else has put the image of you acting black, but really you already, in a sense, are in some small, minute way, because people originated from Africa and then spread out, right?
Yeah, but keep in mind that, like, scientifically and genetically, your DNA and my DNA is extremely similar. There's no way from a scientific standpoint to tell that you are a black person and I am a white person. Literally, there's no way. If you take blood samples of both of us, there's no way, or DNA samples of both of us, there's no way to tell that you are black and I am white from a genetic standpoint. The only way that they tell, like when you take those geneticity tests and stuff, they basically like test for certain traits that are found at very high levels of that culture in those regions, basically. So it's not actually like and I think this is a lot of what has to do with like the era of like Jim Crow and everything, is that people were separated based off of, people were saying like, oh, white people are superior and black people aren't superior, and it's based off of genetics, right? You always hear like the
Mm-hmm.
the Aryan race and the, like the pure genes and whatever that like Hitler came up with and whatever. But there isn't, scientifically, there is not a way to decipher these things. So I find it interesting that we're talking about like, yeah, of course we all relate to probably like a super small tribe of initial humans, which we know scientifically, we know that they started out in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
If Correct me if I'm wrong, it was like Central Africa, where close to the
Yes.
equator, where it's warm.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have talked about this before. As people migrated north, you lose the melanin in your skin that protects you a little bit more from the sun. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when you move up north, there's less sun. The sun is less intense, so your skin becomes lighter as you go up and up, right? So if you start down at Turkey, you're more like Middle Eastern looking, you're slightly darker. Then you move
Mm-hmm.
up to the Baltics, they're still a little bit dark. And then you get to like Poland, that's where you start having your like average white person look, right? And then if
Okay.
you go all the way up to like Norway, they're like extremely white because of the difference in sun intensity.
Yes.
They've just lost all the melanin in their skin. And you and I have talked about this before. The nose shape is interesting too, because if you look at typical like European noses, they're more narrow, and
Mm-hmm.
that has to do with the cold air. So
Yeah.
it has less surface area, and it actually heats up better. And
Yeah.
when you are in Africa, if you look at African noses, they're wider in
Mm-hmm.
stature. And that is to cool down the air because there's much more surface area. So the air gets cooled down better. And that's actually like a scientifically proven thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just find it interesting. I know we all relate back to like one tribe, and culture is an inherently like we've created it. You know what I mean? Like it isn't something. Culture exists because we talk about it and because we share stories and have artifacts that we share, traditions that we share. But
Yeah.
culture isn't necessarily like woven into our DNA, you know what I mean, from like a
Mm-hmm.
scientific standpoint. So I just find it interesting that it's something that we created as human beings, but it's still in a way like an exclusivity thing, like an in-group out-group kind of thing. If you're not in our culture, then you shouldn't be appropriating it. You shouldn't be part of it.
But I think it's like I go back to saying that people, the ones that are genuine, they want to honor and respect. So how do we find a way that, you can wear that African dress, or you can wear that headdress, or you can wear this or this traditional? Like, how do we find a way that we can honor those
Mm-hmm.
things about the culture that we love without feeling that we are having a negative connotation? And I think some of that has to do with how it has been presented and perceived in the media, that, oh, you're ripping off, you know, box braids. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's an African American thing, right? Like, so how do we, or you shouldn't wear an afro, or you shouldn't wear this or weaves or an extent, like, how do we differentiate between honoring and respecting and not having cultural appropriation? I think it's the way that it's presented to us, and how we look at it. I think it's okay to honor that culture or whatever it is, if it's through dress or through dance. As a matter of fact, guess what? So I'm super excited because, and I kind of wish I could take this class. So my oldest, he's at university, and a local university, and so one of the classes he's taking next year is West African dance. How
Mm.
incredibly awesome is that? And I think our other friend took that same class too. She went to the same university and
Yes,
graduated,
she
and now
did.
she's in a graduate program. So I'm super excited for him to take this class, because I think it's going to be a great thing. And by the way, when my husband, um when we were still dating, we were engaged, he went to school in Hawaii, and one of the classes he took was Polynesian culture and dance. I mean, how cool is that? Like, I
Mm.
feel like that is a way of like celebrating and honoring, and you're learning about that culture and what they do and what those dances mean and how they have impacted the culture overall. And that's, you're getting knowledge, right? You're getting knowledge. And then if you want to share that knowledge, I feel like that is a way that we are honoring and respecting, and we're not appropriating anything. I feel like
Mhm.
that is just a good way. And so I wish we could figure out a way that we could be honoring and respectful of those things and not have that negative connotation of, oh, you're just doing it and you're ripping it off and you're acting this way, and stop. And acting black. And this is the other thing too. I also think that, when people say, oh, you're acting black or you're acting this way, like growing up, as you all know, I am African American. And so I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, which is fine. But my parents were always very clear that you speak English, Dina. That's what they would say.
Mhm.
So you speak English. We're going to talk appropriately. We're going to speak like we have some intelligence behind ourselves. Right. So when our neighborhood began to diversify, right, and other African American families started to move into our neighborhood, I did not speak like them.
Mhm.
Honestly, I didn't. They'd be like, yo, ain't you blah 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 blah, blah, right? And I'd be
Mhm.
like, oh no. I'd be like, oh no, how are you today? Yes. And they would be like, what? And when I was growing up, especially in middle school and high school, the black community would call me white girl. They
Mhm.
would, because I did
Mhm.
not speak like them. I was not part of their culture. And so I was an outsider to them.
Yeah.
But I didn't
But
think of
you're
it that
too
way.
black for the white kids too.
Yes, but I was too black for the white kids. So I lived in this weird juxtaposition of a world where I didn't fit in one and I didn't fit in the other. And I just kind of was hanging out in the middle, like treading water, like, okay, let me just try to find my way and make my way. Right. And so I think we just have to be kind and be respectful and honor all cultures. Like, that's really the main thing. And
Mhm.
we love to celebrate all different cultures and eat all kind of different foods and enjoy all different experiences, because that's how you learn, right? That's how you grow. But if you do it with ill intentions, then that's a problem. That is a definite problem. But if you're
Yeah.
doing it respectfully, then and gaining knowledge from it, and then you're going to pass that knowledge on to somebody else and be like, hey, this is the knowledge I received because I learned about this culture, all for it making people better. Yes, yes, yes.
Mhm. I mean, I agree with you. What you said at the beginning is that it's portrayed in media and in social media, especially, even if you don't have bad intentions, right? Someone can claim that you do, and then everything kind of just runs like wildfire from there. And a perfect example of this, I think, is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau from Canada
Mm-hmm.
decided to take a international trip to the country of India, and
Okay.
he gets off the plane and he dressed his entire family. He has two kids and his wife, so the four of them chose to dress in traditional Indian garb, like ceremonial outfits that you see at
Okay.
like Indian weddings, basically. So they get off the
Yes.
plane, and it was like a huge international story, right? He
Okay.
greets Prime Minister Modi. He like bows and stuff like they're supposed to in India, how they greet each other.
Yeah.
And obviously there were photographers there. They took pictures of him and his entire family like walking down the stairs off the plane. And it was this international piece that ran like wildfire. Oh my God, Justin Trudeau and his entire family, they're appropriating Indian culture. It's so disrespectful. And in all fairness, Justin Trudeau, there is a picture of him back in college or when he was teaching or something where he did do blackface. Okay,
Okay.
so
Yes.
he had a history of potentially racist imagery, we can
Mm-hmm.
call it. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So anyway, he apologized a long time ago for that picture and for
Yes.
that, and it was like a really heartfelt apology, in my opinion. I feel like he actually meant it. Do I think that he should still hold his position, having a history of racism? Probably not, but that's regardless of the point. I think that he had no ill intentions of dressing up and doing India a disservice. You know what I mean? I don't think he was
Yes.
being disrespectful in any way, but the media took it, and social media took it as he was being extremely disrespectful, dressing his entire white family up in Indian clothing.
But then this is the other thing, like, so I've never been to an Indian wedding, but I've seen pictures and stuff. When you
Mm-hmm.
have people from other races, they're going to the wedding and they're specifically asked to dress
To wear
like
that, yeah.
to wear
Yep.
that in that culture. So to me, him in my head right now, him wearing those things is you are visiting a country, and obviously I know different outfits in different countries mean different things in different colors. So if you are following the guidelines of, okay, we are going to wear this color because this is appropriate as a visiting dignitary and things, then why can't you show respect like that and wear those things? To me, as long as you're doing it respectfully, like for instance, purple, right? Let's say in India, purple is a very sacred color. Dude, don't wear purple. But if
Yeah.
they say you can wear green, sure, wear green, right? Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're following the guidelines of what is sacred and what is respectful and what colors you can and you can't wear. As long as you're doing it with good intentions, I am okay with that,
Mm-hmm.
But it's the minute that it crosses that line that,
I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly that if you're appropriating a culture in with the intent to be disrespectful, that is completely wrong. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
But I think that a lot of people also have an issue with people just appropriating their culture and being positive about it just because they're outside of the group.
Well, and you don't want to do it just because it's the thing to do. That's, to
Yeah.
me, that still is like you still have bad intentions. Just because
Yeah.
it's cool and the thing to do, no, not just because everybody else is doing it, right? Like you
Hmm.
have to have a purpose behind it.
Yeah.
So that was a good question.
Thank you.
I
Thank
know
you.
you always bring
You
in
want to
that
go?
that sauce and that heat every week, man.
I
I need
try
to.
sometimes.
I know.
I'm a deep thinker. I like to think of myself as the Aristotle of our generation.
I know. I need the Aristotle. Oh my gosh, I can't even with you right now. I feel like I need to up my game. Woo. Okay. All right. Are you ready
No,
for my?
just kidding. I'm not that conceited, but
I know.
but yeah, I'm ready for your question.
Okay. So my question, I found this was another article that I found very interesting to me. So here we are. We are a year and a half into this pandemic, and now we have a widely available vaccine. Um,
Mhm.
this is probably the first time that I am publicly going to say this because I typically, when I do posts on social media, I don't typically talk about things like this, but I am vaccinated. I did receive my vaccine because I work in education. And so I got the Johnson and Johnson. I got the 1 dose. That's our state. That's the
You
one
got
that
the
they will.
limited edition. Congratulations, homie.
Thank you. The limited edition. So anyway, so I am vaccinated. And that, as I have said before previously, when we've kind of touched on things like this, it is a very personal choice. It is up to you. I'm not saying that you have to or you don't have to. You need to do what's best for you and your family. I've always said that and I stick by that. And for me, this was the best option for me and my family. But I found it interesting that I read an article in the New York Times, and I've also read a article in USA Today that there are millions of Americans who are skipping their second dose of the COVID
Mhm.
vaccine. Um, and and the one that's 2 dose, or Pfizer or Moderna is the 2 dose one. And it's very interesting that they are skipping their dose, right? And so here I'm looking at my article right now. It says
Eight
more
percent. 8%.
8% have skipped their second doses.
I
So,
saw, for context, we did not talk about this beforehand. I saw Jen, what's her last name? Patsky, the current
oh yeah, Pasky.
press secretary. Yeah,
Yes.
the current press secretary. A reporter asked her a question basically about how to combat this high, like unusually high percentage of people skipping their second dose, because you need the second dose to be fully vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
So a reporter asked her that question, and she said, yes, I know 8% of people who got the first dose didn't take the second dose, which I believe works out to what, like 20 million people?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
About that.
Yeah.
So that's how I know. That's how I'm familiar with the statistic.
So, but my question for you is, with cases surging, especially in countries like India, and even here, we did have a little bit where there was cases on the rise as people were getting vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
Why why do you think people, I just don't understand why people are skipping their second dose. It's like only, you know, doing half the assignment, half the school assignment, and then you're like, "Oh, I'm just going to turn the rest of the assignment in blank. Here you go, teacher, 50%. Woo." So,
Mm-hmm.
what is your thinking behind why people are not getting their second dose?
The first two reasons that come to mind that I think make the most logical sense is one, for low income Americans who decided to get the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine. Um, Perhaps they couldn't get off work, or they couldn't find transportation to go get their second dose, right? Or the other possibility with that is that they just had a conflict with their second dose and they couldn't make it. But you have a limited window, right? They
Mm-hmm.
say it's like a week after, 10 days after, I don't know. And then
Mm-hmm.
you basically have to start all over again.
Okay.
Um, that I think is probably less of the reason than my possible second theory of what is happening. I think that um, those people, those 8% of people, probably reacted pretty poorly to the first dose. And
Okay.
possibly their thinking is that, well, I got the first dose. I've never been in contact with COVID. Um, I'm still unsure of whether it's real. I'm still unsure of whether, I'll get really sick. I'm relatively young. I'm relatively healthy. So why would I subject myself to fever, chills, body ache, headache, you know what I mean, with the second dose again,
Mm-hmm.
when I can just take the gamble and probably be okay? So I think that's
Okay.
the thought process is more of a selfish one. I think that possibly people didn't react well, and they're basically just going to take their chances now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm looking at the New York Times article right now. So they've kind of cited a couple reasons. And one of them you did touch on
Mm-hmm.
was that they said some people can be flexible about being rebooked or just limited transportation, which
Yeah.
you did touch on, and jobs, like if they work and they go, they
Mm-hmm.
can't get there. Another issue that has been coming up why people have been skipping their second dose is there's been problems with shipments,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where, so, as you know, there's been lots of local drugstores that have been administering the vaccine, like CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, um, places like that. And so, like, people will go and they'll go get their first shot and they'll have the Pfizer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes time for them to go get their second shot, that same Walgreens that they went back to may
Yeah,
not
they don't
have the
have it.
Pfizer. They have
Mm-hmm.
Moderna. And you're like, what? Like, and so
Mm-hmm.
some people aren't willing to go through the hassle of trying to find another Walgreens, that has
Yeah.
the Pfizer so they can go get their second their second dose.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason is hold on one second. Um they're saying that the CDC recommends a 3-week gap, but because these pharmacies have been so inundated with appointments, they're scheduling almost 4 weeks out right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. I think it's becoming more available and readily available to schedule appointments. But you and I both know in the beginning, when we were both clearly eligible, we could not find appointments
Yeah.
anywhere. So, trying to find, appointments and trying to get things done. It's just, people are just like, well, okay, I guess since I can't find an appointment and I can't find anything, I'm just not going to get my second dose, right?
Hmm.
And so, I think if we are going to have these vaccines available and readily available, we have to make sure that we are encouraging people not only to get the first dose, but also to get the second dose. And like I said earlier, it's your choice whether you get them or not. But if you're going to do it, you might as well follow through and get the whole thing. And so I thought that was very interesting when I saw, and it was two different articles that came up in my feed about people not getting their second dose. And I'm like, what kind of craziness is that? Like, why would you
Hmm.
not go get your second dose? I will say this, my oldest and my husband receive the 2-dose vaccine.
Hmm.
And both of them had very minimal side effects. The main side effect that they felt was the fatigue, was pretty much the big one. I think they were fortunate that they did not get the chills or the body aches or the fever, but the fatigue definitely hit them. My husband got his second dose on a Saturday, and he felt great. And I kept checking in with him. And then Sunday, the next day, like probably almost 24 hours later, he hit the wall and you could just, how you see though, it looks like he's moving in slow motion and moving really slow and sluggish. And he looked at me and I was like, you need to go downstairs and take a nap and I'll see you when you wake back up. That was kind of my response to him. And which he did. And when he came back upstairs, our room is downstairs on a different level. And so he felt much better. He still said he felt kind of sluggish, but he felt better. I know that when I got mine, I felt really good, pretty good. Okay, the first 24 hours afterwards. But then the second day, I also felt, I call it, when you have a weighted blanket and it just kind of weighs you down and you just feel heavy. That's how I
Hmm.
felt. I didn't feel, I had the fatigue, not as bad as what my husband did, but I just felt very weighted. So I too went and laid down and I took a nap and I felt much better when I woke up. I drank plenty of fluids and plenty of water. So I always recommend that. And they tell you should do that anyway. When after you get your shot, they should tell you should drink plenty of fluids, but I always recommend it. I'm like, drink plenty of water. And the same with my oldest. He had the two shot one, and same thing. He just felt very fatigued on the second day, and so he went and took a nap. But he also drank plenty of water. So
Hmm.
it's just interesting to me that people, for so long, they've wanted a solution. Like, how can we get out of this pandemic? We have one, and you're given the opportunity to partake of the solution, but you're only going to partake of it halfway if you
Hmm.
choose to partake of it. So it's baffling to me that, the government is trying to do everything in its power to give people a solution and an option so we can get back to normal. And then those that partake of it don't partake of it fully. They're just like, oh, okay, whatever, great. Right? And I
Yeah.
know that life happens and there's circumstances. Like, life happens to everybody. But I think that we have to do better. And especially those that, were, because essentially if you don't get, because they're planning on you getting both doses. So if you don't get both doses, now we have a dose that is worth nothing, right? Because they can only be used after, so they have to be kept in such conditions, right? So now we have a dose that we can't use, but also you've taken 2 doses away from someone that it may be life or death for them, but they haven't been
Hmm.
able to schedule. So it's like this trickle down effect. And people are like, well, why aren't we getting out of this pandemic? Well, here's the main reason why, right? We're never going to come out of it if we don't get the people vaccinated that need it and want it, right? If you don't
Hmm.
want it, that's fine. You don't have to get it. You're not taking away from somebody that does, because you're not getting in line to get it. But if you get in line and you get it and you only get one and then you don't get the second one, now you have to get back in line and start over, but you've already taken a slot from someone that could have gotten their 2-dose shot and they were willing and ready to get it, but now they can't get it, and they're still having a hard time getting it. So that kind of just baffles my mind a little bit. I just
And
think
I would argue that if you went out of your way the first time to set up an appointment and schedule 2 or 3 weeks out, or for Moderna it's 4 weeks out, I would argue that you're probably not going to put in the effort to do it again. Most people, I would assume, would probably just be like, well, whatever. Like, at this point, enough people are vaccinated, herd immunity. I'm not going to go through the trouble of doing it all over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like, it just, I don't know. Right?
I mean, I don't know either. I feel like it is an interesting argument where people really want to be out of the pandemic, but they don't want to get vaccinated, which is basically right now like the only way that we are going to get out of it. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many countries in the world that are ordering vaccines from the US. You know what I mean? Like, the US has one of the largest vaccination campaigns right now, and it's one of the quickest. We're vaccinating people like 3 million doses a day. You know what I mean?
It is an insane number. It's an insane number.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people to vaccinate in one day. That at that speed, you could vaccinate the entire country of Canada, I think, in like 10 days.
Yeah. Well, no. And so I think I also want to touch on what you had said too, that in the article, it talked about one person that he got the shot and then he developed, the headache and the fever and the chills, but he still has the continuing headache and it hasn't gone away. So he's like, well, I still have this headache. Are we like, why am I going to go get the second dose if I felt this crappy after the first one? So right now I'm just going to forego the second dose. But that's great. And that is your choice. Remember, it's your choice to do that. But I still go back to the thing of, okay, so now you worked hard to try to get a slot to get a shot. You got it. You only got 50% of it. But now you've wasted a dose and you've taken a shot away from somebody else who could have needed it. So essentially you've wasted 4 doses, right? And we're trying to do our best to vaccinate those that want to be vaccinated. And then there was a period of time too where they suspended the Johnson & Johnson because of rare clotting that happened. And then too, there was a time where production kind of slowed down and they weren't providing as many shots, and wasn't there there was one facility somewhere that a whole bunch of the doses went bad because they weren't kept at the right temperature. So there's all these factors. So why not? You've signed up, go get the second dose. You made the choice to go get the first dose. So why would you not go get the second one? Like, it blew my mind when I read these 2 articles and I was like, really? This is a thing? I almost was like, this is a thing? Like, what kind of thing is this? Like, I was very surprised that this was honestly a thing. Now, let's just also say that the majority of people that need the 2 doses are going to get. So in both articles, it said 92% of people do come back for the second dose. So that's a high number. But when you have 8%, and 8% roughly equals about 20 million, and we're trying to do 3 million doses a day, that's not very good either. When you have that many people not getting their second COVID dose, and I know people are like, oh, you're just following along and just doing this. And that's okay. That's okay for you to feel that way. I respect that opinion. I just know that you have to do what's best for your family. And I knew that us getting vaccinated was best for our family. It's what we chose to do, and you are free to make that choice as well. And all my other friends have chosen. Some are, hey, we are going to go get our vaccine. Others are not, and I hold no ill will against you. That is your choice, and you live by the choices that you make and what you decide to do. But I do know that I highly encourage, if you have already gotten the first shot, go get the second one. Like, there's just you made the time to go get the first one, right? Because think about it, when we were looking to get trying to get our shots, do you remember what we were doing? Like, I would text you and be like, oh my gosh, there's appointments. Like, okay, people, this is what I did. Do you want to know what I did? I joined a special Facebook group that that lists when appointment slots open up. Right? So this special Facebook group says, oh, there's appointments in this town, in this town. So I joined this special Facebook group to try to find appointments because I couldn't find appointments anywhere. And so finally I was able to get appointments. Right. Mm-hmm. And so at the same time, I'm not only looking appointments for myself and my husband because we felt that we needed to get them or try to get them, but I'm also looking appointments for other people that I know that are also eligible, and you were eligible because of where you work and what you do part-time. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to find you. So I'm texting back and forth. And do you remember that I was trying to schedule you an appointment? I was able to get you in, and I'm like, what's your birthday? And I'm mm-hmm. sending you angry texts. It is stressful, by the way. I mean, I'm hoping it's not as stressful now, but at the time, and you only have 10 minutes to fill out your appointment slot or they're going to give it away. It's like when you see that little timer thing click down on the timer clock when you're trying to order tickets. They're like, the tickets will remain in your basket for the next 5 minutes. And if you don't order them, then they and so you're trying to do everything so quick and get everything in. And so you can get your appointment. You spent so much time and effort and energy to get that appointment, and you go for the first one. And by the way, most places you have to schedule the second one at the same time when you schedule the first one. So why would you not go? I just don't understand. And maybe I will never understand, and that's okay. But I just think it's important that if you're going to get your first one, you need to go get the second one. And because you're taking away 4 doses. In my head, it's 4 doses. Somebody that could really use it, and you're wasting 2 doses because now you have to start over. We have to now reinvest more doses in you. And how does that work? Those people that only got the first dose, and the recommendation is you have to get it 3 weeks later. Do you just give them the second dose 5 months down the line, or do you make them start over? So, and what are the side effects of making somebody start over from dose 1? How does your body react to that? We don't even, I don't know.
The doses are the same. So you get the same dose twice.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a separate vaccine for the second shot. So technically, if you you get your first shot and you miss your second shot, usually they don't pull it. Usually they don't pull the vaccine until there are people there, because they do have to be kept at a specific temperature, especially for Pfizer. It has to be crazy sub-zero temperatures. You need a special freezer to keep them. They could use that dose for somebody else technically. But I believe that if you wait longer than 5 or 6 weeks to get that second dose, the antibodies that your body already, your body, what happens is that they inject the vaccine, your body recognizes a threat, it starts building antibodies. And, the reason for a second dose is 3 weeks later, if you inject that same dose in, your body says, oh, that wasn't just a temporary new threat that we don't really have to pay attention to. This is a real threat. It just appeared again. So let's make more antibodies and keep them around longer. And that's how you get the levels of antibody resistance for a year now for Pfizer, for sure.
Okay.
So that's the science behind going to get a second dose. Is your first dose, your body thinks, oh, this is new, we're going to fight it, but I'm not sure, you know what I mean? So they fight it for a week, and then your body realizes, okay, well, that was kind of weird. It was just an anomaly. We're going to start forgetting about it, right? Then you get the second dose and your body says, oh crap, this is a real threat. It just appeared again. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we should make more precautionary measures. We should like figure something out, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the science behind getting a second dose. With Johnson and Johnson, it's a little bit different because you're basically injecting a like I the way I learned it in school was like you're basically injecting the viral version of old people into your body. You're
Oh, okay.
injecting like a weakened amount of the virus into your body, or a
Mm-hmm.
very small amount of the virus. So I don't know. It's interesting to me. I think the reason why so many people are missing it is, like I said, because of obligations. Transportation is probably one of them for the lower income people, and I think a large percent of it is due to the fact that some people get symptoms and they don't react well, and they think, well, I didn't really even want the vaccine in the first place. You know, I'll take my chances. What's the point?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where my thought process is. It does kind of suck. I mean, those are the people that they're going to continue spreading the pandemic, right? And the issue with spreading it is, yes, it's your choice to get the vaccine, but if it mutates and the vaccine that we got does not cover the mutation, then we're basically starting all over again. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So
Yeah.
that's kind of my worst fear, is that it mutates, it becomes more lethal, meaning that it kills more people, and it becomes more contagious, meaning that it spreads easier. So right now, it's not too bad, but it's known to mutate fairly quickly. There's already 6 or 7 confirmed mutations out there,
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are
and
already variants for sure.
I think the scary thing is that if it mutates further and it becomes more contagious and more lethal, then we're going to be, you know, like in a bubonic plague type thing, like the Black Plague, where it kills a large percentage of the population.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my thoughts. Those are my thoughts.
That's your thoughts. Well, thank
Hmm.
you. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. No, I just, like I said, it was very interesting that both those articles came up. And so I read both of them, and I honestly was like, this is a thing. Like, I didn't think it was a thing, but apparently it's a thing that people aren't going to get their second doses. But, you know, it's your choice. But I would highly encourage that if you got the first one, to get the second one, just because I'm always think about the collective, because you're taking that chance away from somebody else that maybe needs it. Maybe it's life-saving for them to
Hmm.
and you took up a position that they now can't access it, and now we've wasted doses when you know, we shouldn't be wasting doses. Anyway,
Yeah,
wow, those were two very different questions today.
they were
Very,
different. It's funny
yeah,
because last week we were on like an education kick, and this
yeah.
week
This,
we're completely different sides of the spectrum.
yeah. We talked about cultural appropriation and getting vaccinated. So if
Hmm.
you like what you're listening to and you like what you're hearing, please let us know. Let us know your thoughts on the topics that we discussed today. If you want to share if you've been vaccinated or not vaccinated, and why you think that maybe you should be vaccinated, or why you think we shouldn't be vaccinated, we are always willing to listen, because these conversations and dialogues help us learn from each other, help us grow, help us have discussions about the things that matter to us. And this is how we become better humans. I'm Dina McKell,
And I'm Michael Petuhoff.
and this is Sliding with D&M.
Thank you guys for listening. We hope to see you next week.